Welcome to the Aesclepion. I'm Kevin McKeag.
And I'm Luke Strom.
Our podcast dives into the deep questions of life. How do we find love, discover our true selves, and live out our dreams in this wild, weird world? We're going to take you on a journey of philosophical inquiry, spiritual adventure.
Okay. Just imagine you're like sitting around a campfire with the homies and you all start opening up and talking about real shit. That's pretty much what we're going to do here.
Yeah, or it's what I said.
Okay, look, all you need to know is that we have no idea what we're doing.
Welcome to the Aesclepion. Aesclepion.
That's what I said.
What's up, everyone? This is Kevin McKeag. Just a note, Luke Strom, my co-host, is taking a step back from the Aesclepion to focus on other projects. He's still going to be behind the scenes working as a co-producer and occasional collaborator, but I'm stepping up to helm as creative director from here on out. My guest today is Braxton Dudley. Braxton is a therapist of the transpersonal ilk, trained at Europa University, and is a skilled meditation instructor. We get into parts work, attachment theory, shadow work, and the process of psycho-spiritual integration. It's a great conversation, and I hope you enjoy it.
You know, I think I got into it just because of meditation and contemplative practices. Mm-hmm. And I would say if I had it my way, I'd be specializing in working with contemplative practitioners, like not exclusively, they're just my favorite.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more I can do with them.
Yeah.
You know, and there's so many more places we can go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where, IFS parts work is traditionally like you relating to your parts. But I had one client, I've done this multiple, but like one client, for instance, who was a Buddhist who had a relationship with a particular deity. So we did the sadhana of that deity, evoked it into the field and did parts work, from the influence of that sadhana. Because we both had the empowerment of that sadhana.
Yeah.
And
will you explain what a sadhana is?
Yeah, sure. It's like, that one was like a ritual text where you're doing something to basically evoke the lived experience of a deity,
It's like a practice.
Sure, yeah. And there's imaginal ones where you imagine it outside of yourself, like blessing you, and then you imagine yourself arising as the deity, and then there's intricate visualizations associated with some that involve like visualizing other deities in your heart, and then mantras rotating in the deity in your heart instead of just a mantra in your heart. So you get complicated.
This is interesting, man. So yeah. It's like parts work, you imagine an inner child, in inner exile, but you're talking about using parts work as a way to get into a deity or a transpersonal energy and actually talk to parts. It reminds me of Genpo Roshi, who is a Zen master.
Yeah,
this thing called Big Mind.
Yeah, I've done a Big Mind retreat.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it's funny how with parts work you can go pre-conscious,
sure,
or you can go transpersonal.
Definitely.
Contact that greater energy.
Yeah, and then, I'm just feeling all the different directions with that. So for instance, even with like ideal parent figure protocol, that came from deity yoga.
Really?
So Dan
Brown?
Yeah. So Dan Brown, and this is like a huge part of my attachment training, was studying Dan Brown's stuff and the adult attachment inventory. And then I did ideal parent figure protocol as like a client for a while, which instead of visualizing a deity with certain enlightened qualities, and according to Tantric Buddhism, you would visualize these parent figures who had the qualities of secure attachment. And then you would visualize them relating to yourself. And as a therapist, if I was doing an IPF session with someone, which I've never been trained in, so I don't do like official pure IPF, but reparenting has been something in the field of therapy since like the 80s. That was like when you start seeing that it's popular to like reparent yourself. And before there were parts, there were complexes in Jungian psychology. So parts have been called different things in different therapy traditions. And you can even relate them to sanskaras in Buddhism, you know? So these like inner knots in your, or like karma that hasn't been metabolized and worked through. You know, and in IFS, they map it out similar to the karma in Buddhism. There's, you know, lineage burdens, like family karma, cultural burdens, you know, cultural karma, and then personal, you know, they don't have past life karma in IFS, but there are practitioners that kind of talk about it. And even my lead trainer in my IFS training made like a sentence about people experiencing past lives, parts work and stuff like that. And so, yeah, so the whole notion of IPF came from deity yoga in Buddhism. And I've heard Dan Brown in a talk who was saying he considered the preliminaries for Westerners, that if you didn't have a sense of self that was stable enough to explore what's meaningful to you and to have meaningful relationships, that it was harder to go deeper in the spiritual path because the attachment system would keep getting activated, you know. I don't know how true that is. I think people can probably wake up in all sorts of scenarios with all sorts of attachment styles. This is why we have people with disorganized attachment also having profound transmission as teachers, you know, and then people run into, and I've been a part of a bunch of communities over the years of teachers who were charismatic and powerful and changed my life, but relationally had unaddressed shadow that would lead to the community collapsing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Same. Yeah. We've seen that kind of again and again.
Yeah.
Where powerful, you know, fully transmitted teachers will do some shady stuff with a student and then just tear a hole in the community, leaving people to wonder, you know, what the hell was that?
Sure.
If this person was enlightened, why did they cause so much havoc?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I have no idea why the world works the way it does. And sometimes I hold like the inquiry that maybe there's things unfolding at a larger level that we don't totally understand, where things have to be brought to the surface to be met, and they come through, you know, people who that
How could it not
connects
be?
to.
Yeah. I mean, you think about war.
Sure.
You think about the 20th century being a kind of abattoir, bloodbath.
Yeah.
And yet there was a psychological birth that happened during the past 150 years in modernism that gave us the atom bomb, gave us the, you know, computer chip.
Sure.
Gave us the internet, you know.
Yeah.
Gave us these cultural revolutions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there
messy,
might be
messy. Growth is very messy, and humanity is very messy.
Humans are for sure messy. I mean, I think it was so helpful for me when I started getting over the idea that like teachers weren't human, and that I should hold them up to like this image of being a Buddha, which, you know, that depends how you look at your teacher, like a Buddha. So it's like, that makes sense too, that people are projecting in those ways, or like, well, if I'm going to look at you this way, then you also need to deliver, you know?
Yeah, totally. You need to be morally perfect.
Yeah.
And even the pressure of having students who think you're morally perfect.
Screwed.
Can you imagine the pressure of that?
Yeah.
You think of somebody like MLK, who was a bastion of moral purity, and how rare is that?
Sure. And, you know, I don't know how MLK was like.
He was imperfect.
Yeah, I know nothing of any of that. But I think it also brings back to like the notion of shadow. Like we all have it, you know. And also not everything gets at shadow, and things get at different kinds of shadow.
Yeah.
So I think shadow, the way I look at shadow too, it's like, okay, what facet of our being are we talking about? You know, because if it's collective shadow, you know, that's something we'll embody in certain ways as different kinds of people in different cultures, you know. And who I am, obviously, this culture will be different. And if I go to like Thailand, even like the way they experience me, and you know,
what's the definition of shadow for you? Like, how do you explain it?
Well, first, it's like one of the most vague things.
It's so vague.
Because everyone is saying it in different ways.
Yeah.
It's what I've gathered.
Yeah.
I would say shadow is just what is unaddressed inside of us.
Right.
And so there's degrees of shadow. There's semi-conscious shadow. It's like, oh, I know when I get triggered in a certain way, I've had enough people tell me I've become difficult in this particular way that I need to look at, and that's something I would say semi-conscious, because when it floods and takes over, I might enact it.
Yeah.
And there might be times where I'm able to intervene with it. So that's normally like somewhat on the path of you've done some kind of inner work to be semi-conscious of shadow.
These could be kind of unconscious energies that suddenly take over.
Sure,
Like, I love how the Greeks, Homer, for example, he would talk about the hero being overtaken by the energy of the god of wrath, or something like that.
Sure. Jung defines psychosis, by the way, as archetypal possession.
Yeah.
So being possessed by a particular archetype in a way. So it's kind of like if a part floods you. So what I described was a part, normally a fussy part of me that shows up when I feel my needs aren't met in a particular way. And I have no idea if you've encountered this part of me. Now, you may have at some point.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We know each other well enough where we've seen a lot of sides of each other.
Yeah. So I can get, just uncollaborative. It starts to be hard, I think, for some people to work with me, like in relationship in those moments, not as a whole.
Yeah.
But like that is something in me that at times when it starts to operate, I'm unaware of it until I am.
Yeah.
And then I attempt to intervene with it.
How?
Kind of way.
How do you intervene? What's
your
your practice for it?
I mean, I think that one in particular, that particular part of me, I think I just take space from people. It can actually be helpful. Or, I remember one time I was just like, this is your friend, and just like telling that part of me. So this is like the metacognition, of like,
kind of executive
speaking to
function.
Yeah,
having a little bit of space and power over these parts that arise.
For sure, yeah. And so meditation can help with that, being aware of our mind and our body. But if you're in like a renunciate tradition, for instance, and you're like, oh, it's bad for me to have these emotional needs, and then you have this like renunciate part of you that's like somehow trying to get you out of your needs in relationship.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting. And you mentioned shadow before, and I heard shadow once described as the parts of myself that I deny or repress.
Yeah.
Which is why the definition can be so slippery, because it's very personal.
Yeah.
For example, if you're a spiritual practitioner and you're meditating a lot, and you're doing psychotherapy, and you are, like you said, a renunciate, then the part of you that wants to have sex and eat chocolate and dance, gets pushed into shadow. And then you deny that part of yourself, and then it comes out in weird
sideways ways.
Yeah. Seems like a hallmark of shadow, where as long as it's there, it's announcing itself. It can't be fully repressed or pushed away.
Yeah. And I think we need others to see it.
Yeah.
For the most part.
I agree.
Initially, at the very least. So I would decide
blind spot
that there's like this like gradient of like semi-conscious and sometimes aware to like very murky, not very aware of it, but I can kind of sense its presence, like when it's in my relationships or in, in my psyche.
What's the tell for you?
For that?
Yeah. Does your spidey sense go off of like, oh, dude, I think I'm in shadow?
Keep ending up.
Do the people around you tell you? Yeah.
I think repeating circumstances.
Right.
But you also be careful. We can be in systems that will repeat those circumstances because it's in the collective, not as much the individual. So it's kind of like a dance of like, oh, is this a collective thing? Is this an individual thing? But it's like one of the diagnostic criterias that I hold for myself is like, oh, if I keep saying this same thing about this particular kind of person, I start to want to look at myself and be like, oh, is there something being triggered in me that's somehow polarizing people into that position in my life?
Right.
So for me, with that one part, it's like, oh, there's some unmet need around like care. And that part of me is a little younger, And so it tends to anticipate care from another instead of myself, And so, when I start feeling that part, it's like, oh, and I can't go to myself for that particular kind of emotional care. And I'm like, oh, Kevin, you're not showing up for me right now.
Yeah. I know I'm distracted. I'm a bad person. I can't give you the attention and love that you need.
Yeah.
I'm busy. These are the messages we get from our parents,
Sure.
right?
Exactly.
We internalize those, and then that part of ourself stays unmet.
Yeah. And I'm
into adulthood.
Not a kid anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's like for me, the attachment repair for myself is just like an ongoing process of meeting those places in me that I was anticipating others to meet in particular ways. And
Well,
it's also balanced with, also as an adult, I get to choose who's in my life. I get to choose like who and how are you available, and based on that, how close or far is the person going to be in my life?
Is this person nourishing to me?
Sure.
A healthy relationship.
Yeah. And overall, because everyone's been draining to me at some point for some reason,
Yeah.
That's
because we're all super annoying.
There's this guy, Bruce Titt. Have you heard of him in the scene?
Yeah, I met him. My ex-girlfriend and I went and saw him briefly, but I ended up getting in a philosophical argument with him, and we didn't go back because I didn't agree with what he was saying so much.
Yeah. He was my therapist
and he's
maybe a year for 2 years.
No, he is. Is he?
I don't think he is.
Oh,
that I know of.
Okay.
That would be wild.
I thought he got cancer and passed away, but
He definitely had cancer.
We'll have to.
While I was with him as a client, he had cancer.
Okay. I hope he's still alive.
Yeah. What was interesting is I didn't really vibe with him as a client, but I stayed with him for like a year and a half just because he seemed like really good at what he did and the way he did it.
Yeah.
But it ended up not feeling like relational enough for me.
Yeah.
But he said things that like have really stuck with me and like informed my life deeply. Which one is relationships are inherently disturbing. Which at first sounds really bleak.
Yeah.
It's not their only disturbing, but that they're groundless. You can't really like totally like predict a person.
Yeah.
And we're not going to always be met by the other.
Yeah.
And, that is normal. And some people struggle to tolerate not being met in the ways that they really needed and never got. I'm speaking of myself right now.
I remember being really bothered. My girlfriend at the time was struggling with chronic illness. And I was had become her support person and really wanted her to get better. And it became a kind of agenda for us to heal.
Sure.
And that felt very positive.
Sure.
But when I showed signs of being her champion, he cut through that in this way where he was kind of going like, what if she never gets better?
Yeah.
Interesting. And I was like, well, I think that's, we basically wasted the entire session by my arguing with him.
I could see that. Yeah, he's willing.
What if nothing matters and you just need to not try? Kind of thing, this old school Buddhist kind of relativism.
I'll say, I think what I'm sensing from you in that interaction was part of why I didn't like vibe for good, Yeah. He actually recommended I go try something else at some point. I think he could tell.
Yeah.
But
it's pretty cool. Well, you said some interesting things. You said projections, and it seems like beyond projections, which I'd love to get your definition of that term, and projections, it seems like you feel has its own power to actually foment situations interpersonally.
Yeah.
And I don't hear that often. So I'm curious if you could define projection for us, and then let's go into that.
Sure. Yeah. For me, projection would be when I'm taking my perception and imagining it to be the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's degrees of projection. Like I don't think you could perceive at all without projecting to some degree. We're creating representations of the whole self and world, and pretty much every moment. And it's always in flux. How we perceive the world is dependent on our mood. For instance, how we perceive what happened to us is dependent on our mood. memory, perception, and mind state are interconnected, and this is something you learn in neurobiology. Particularly, I learned that from Stan Tatkins, who made PACT. It's a huge part of what he teaches is memory is basically not a good representation of what happened. So how to help couples not just argue about memory, but tend to how memory is arising in each other. And what makes that easier is when it's the more flexible we are. So if I imagine my memory to be exactly how it happened, and I'm fixed on that, it's going to make it very hard for someone else who lives in another body and another mind to get on board with that one person's experience. Now we need shared reality, for sure. So
Right.
I'm not
Right. And shared reality is where, even though we're both constructing all the time, we have points of agreement, or we can say this happened and this is how it was.
Yeah.
This is how it is, right? Versus getting trapped in our mental models of how things were, or our resentments, or what have you.
What's interesting is Stan says that people who have secure functioning relationships have a higher priority for creating shared realities to be able to collaborate together and work together. That's a higher priority than being right about what happened.
Yeah.
So people, he says, in secure functioning argue less about what happened and how to meet what is happening, in the moment, or how the past lives in them. So this one is still to some degree hard for me to chew from him, but he'll say things like, if you hurt your partner and you don't agree with how they perceived it, you still are sorry for hurting them.
Yeah.
Because you take seriously the fact that they were hurt, and that matters to you more than getting it exactly right about what you said, as the priority. That doesn't mean there won't be time to debrief and talk about it. But,
why is secure attachment, why is moving in the direction of security, which is kind of a skill?
Sure.
Why is that so important for us?
First, I think there's a difference between secure functioning relationships and secure attachment.
Good. Run us down.
So let's see. I always want to go back for 1 second to what I was saying earlier, because I think this is all it'll come back around. So what I was saying earlier about when I get in this fussy part, how might I polarize someone into a certain place?
Okay.
Also, it's called enactment in therapy.
Okay.
So
good.
It's one thing you start to notice in yourself is when I'm feeling a certain way that I'm not used to feeling, might this be how people in my client's life might feel with them, and it just could be countertransference about me. That's what it would be.
So enactment is this, tell me if I'm wrong.
Sure, yeah, go for it.
So the powerful projection where if I'm projecting out onto somebody, I'm actually facilitating the kind of behavior that I'm looking for on some unconscious level.
What I would say is I haven't gone as deep in the sense of people are unconsciously actually looking to experience what they don't want. I think that's an existential kink and stuff.
Right.
I've explored it a little, and I kind of, the taste I've had, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe there's a there,
Yeah. Okay, different.
I'm like, oh, actually, there's some facet of me that loves the rejection or something like that. But I'm not deep in that way of doing inner work.
Okay.
But what I do think is for instance, when I get fussy in a particular way, I started to notice that I started to get feedback where I was like, oh, I feel like no matter what I do, it's not going to work. And then when I started to look at my own attachment style, and I was like, oh, wow, there's something in me that doesn't feel met. And so I imagine it's all these things that I want, but then I have
feedback, in other words, from other people is, I feel like I can't do it right. I feel like I can't give you what you want.
Sure.
That kind of thing.
For sure.
Right.
And so there might be a way I started to notice that when I would get upset, not feeling met in a way I needed in a relationship, when I got upset in that particular way, it made people less actually resourced to meet me. So I'm upset that I'm not being met. I'm acting in a way that's depleting the person I'm trying to encourage to meet me by being fussy.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a great strategy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, and so I'm depleting the person who I want to meet me, and then they're not able to meet me as well as I would like. But the more, unmet I feel, the more specific I need to be met.
Yeah.
And so it creates this weird thing
Yeah.
that is pushing someone in the opposite direction of what I actually need.
Right. And you're calling that type of situation enactment, or that's what you call it. It's like,
there's a way I might be polarizing someone into making it harder for them to meet me. Now there's the other side where some of those people actually just might not know how to meet me in those particular ways.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like asking someone who doesn't know how to drive me to the airport.
Yeah.
And being mad that they can't get me there.
Yeah. Yeah. We can't be mad at people for what they haven't learned yet. Not getting us what they haven't learned
yet. I do it all the fucking time. It's just a bad strategy.
Yes. It's a losing battle.
Yeah.
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 Well, relationship is such a growth crucible for us. You feel like you have it all figured out in life, or maybe you don't, but then you get into a relationship and it shows you shadows and it points out your projections and shows the place where you're hurt or traumatized even, and then you're sort of forced to contend with it or just walk away. And it seems like, the healer's path, so anybody who's interested in self-development, ought to listen closely to the importance of staying with relationship and using it to learn how to grow and become a more loving person, because that really matters in this world.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is the vision.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people hold many visions theoretically. And then it's like, those are like North Stars, but then the experience of how to actually get there isn't always there.
Yeah.
And also, you might have the skills to get there with some people and not with others.
Yeah.
And so then people will get in a relationship and I see them, I don't know, maybe really coming into contact with a particular facet of a person, and that doesn't work for them, but does for other people know how to work it differently, And
do you have an example from your own life? Or?
I mean, I think it's easier for me to talk about me. There's multiple. The bad side of talking about me is clients come across it,
You're no longer a god in their eyes, no longer perfect.
I think I do a pretty good job fucking up at them on a semi-regular basis. Actually, not that. I just self-reveal a good amount.
Yeah.
Try and have more of a casual vibe than I'm the professional here.
Yeah.
Because I don't take myself that serious.
I've noticed in my own coaching practice, it builds trust.
Yeah.
To reveal.
Sure. And that's like a cultural thing. I think some of the people I learned from have a more professional front.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm seeing the values of younger people being different in therapists where I had a client come over the other day and I was like, you want a Holly Pop? And they were like, sure. And I was like, oh, I don't think a therapist has ever offered them a casual drink. And I went inside and got it for him.
Right. You want a shot of vodka?
Not quite there. Say that for meditation tutors.
Coaching is so different. One of my clients often will come in and say, hey, do you want a drink? We'll meet at the hotel and we'll get some wine or Prosecco to celebrate wins that he's made.
Oh, cool.
Which he's making a lot of them right now.
Solid.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's limitations to therapy and
there certainly is,
that come along with it for people doing particular kinds of work on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there really are just different clientele, and it gets tricky when it's people who would work well with some of the coaching stuff I've done or the contemplative stuff, but they're seeing me as therapists. Sometimes I have to stay in my lane, in a certain way.
Right. Right. Well, it's tricky, right? Because sometimes with me, unresolved trauma comes up.
Yeah.
And I have some skill with that, but I'm not a therapist.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then if someone is the main reason they're seeing you is intense, ongoing, compounded trauma.
Yeah. And I filter for that, thankfully, because I know that can get very sticky.
For sure.
But
yeah. And that's when some of the boundaries of therapy are the most important.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're working with people who, mainly are not able to reveal in a truthful way with a lot of people around them, and they need a place that they just, yeah, it's just different. Yeah.
The trust that we cultivate in either coaching or therapy seems paramount.
Yeah. And what I'll say, I think the difference between coaching and therapy is just different approaches. It's actually one of my least favorite topics to talk about is the similarities and differences.
Let's not talk about
it. I was about to go there.
We were talking
attachment.
We're talking attachment and projection, shadow and enactment.
Yeah.
Lots of cool stuff.
I mean, I think this is where I think it'll be helpful to boil it down to the three places Dan talks about. Daniel P. Brown. Because he says when you're working with attachment styles, I think this is just true with like therapy in general, he says there is working directly with the internal working model of self and world. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, how do I imagine myself? How do I imagine the world? And that comes out of implicit memory. That lives in our unconscious. We are not consciously constructing our perception of self and the world a significant amount of the time, you know? And so
fascinating.
There's doing the actual experiential internal work of addressing the internal working model. What can change the internal working model as well as life experience, you know? So you have these people out there who are like, wounds happen in relationship and they're healed in relationship. And when I was hearing that earlier in my therapy journey, I heard that as like, you know, you can't really repair yourself so far in the inner world, you know. And you have people like Dick Schwartz on the other side that think you can heal everything from in relationship. Like if you're relating to your own inner system in a loving and caring way, that is relationship. Yeah. And that does heal.
Don't you think it's very personal too?
Which part?
Some people are more other-oriented.
Sure, yeah.
And interpersonal, and they require safety and healing through relationship.
Sure.
Some people are more individualistic, and they want to do their healing work, you know, alone. I mean,
sure.
Frankly, I don't cry very often.
Yeah.
But the moments when I do, it's usually because I'm sitting on the cushion alone, and I can actually process through feelings or pain or memories that I've been holding on to for a long time.
Yeah.
That I just can't get to when I'm around other people. So
sure,
it feels very kind of personal, but I get that flavor of like, okay, where is the healing happening? Is it happening in here? Is it happening between us? Is it happening in a group? And it seems like it can happen anywhere, but
I think that's a good way of putting it, is it can pretty much happen anywhere.
It could happen to you.
Need it in groups. And like, you know, I'm very interpersonally oriented, like definitely more on the anxious, ambivalent side of the attachment spectrum.
This is great. Can you break us down on it's 4 different styles, right?
Yeah. And there's
in attachment theory.
There's subtypes of each type.
Give us the 4,
but
and then maybe we can go into subtypes.
So the 4 styles, and this is what I was just saying with Dan, is the internal working model of there's securely attached people, which they would define as, you know, people who can explore what's meaningful to them on their own, and people who can attach in relationship where they don't have any issues with dependency in relationship, and they also don't have issues with independence. So doing things separately or together, or people depending on them. Some people are allergic to people depending on them, you know, and some people are allergic to, you know, being sort of more self-sovereign. Like I'm more on that end of the spectrum.
You have the allergy to sovereignty and independence.
Yeah, I think there's more for me to tend to there, you know, but I think you can do that in relationship or out of it. I don't think you need to be doing that out of relationship. You know what I mean?
But so the secure, I love this word ambivalent, right? Because it's used colloquially as a thing where you're weak in both areas, kind of.
Sure.
I'm ambivalent. I don't really want this. I don't really want that. I don't really want you. I don't want to be by myself. But that word actually means like multiple strengths,
Yeah.
The
Interesting. I
valence.
didn't know that one.
Yeah.
The way it's used in attachment theory, I'll just say the four first. Secure, anxious, ambivalent, or sometimes it's referred to as preoccupied in adults. And then there is avoidant. And sometimes the anxious ambivalent is just reduced to anxious. Then there is the avoidant / dismissive. So,
When you say that, the four again?
well, that was just three.
Oh, sorry.
So secure, we'll just say anxious, ambivalent, or preoccupied, which is, I'm just going to call anxious moving forward.
Secure, anxious.
Yeah. And then avoidant, which is sometimes referred to as dismissive. And then there's disorganized. And disorganized usually means like heavily, if someone's whole personality structure is disorganized, then that they probably had very heavy abuse and neglect. The source of care was also the source of threat in a life-threatening way. Not just like, oh, my dad yelled at me or my mom yelled at me and they were the source of care or something. Like it's normally people who had life threat in connection with the people giving them care. So yeah, there are these four attachment styles. And I think the way they measured them was really interesting in some research, which is they measured children's capacities to explore on their own in the presence of the mother, and then also to attach and receive care and soothing. So they found that children who were secure, they tended to be able to explore on their own, but they would check to see if the mother was watching and to stay in collaboration with the mother in the play. So the mom might be encouraging or say no, and there was this like collaboration of attachment, relationship, and exploration in secure. When they went to the children who were avoidant, and the children who are avoidant tend to lose the connection to the mother and just play. Also, let me go back to the secure. The mother would then leave the room, and then the child would start crying. A stranger would come in and try and console the child, and then the mother would come back in. Secure children could be consoled. They could be
even if it's not by mom.
Yeah. I don't know about all the like variances in the secure, but overall, the way they talk about it in the research was they were able to be consoled when upset. So the avoidant child, when the mother would leave, they weren't really impacted. They didn't express anything. Even if they could still measure stress at the mother leaving in the infant, there
was no affect.
Yeah. The affect, they tended to also be considered like good children, like they listen or, or don't cry.
Well behaved.
Yeah. Don't cry, even if they are well behaved, and they tend to shut down the attachment part of their system. So a relational need, they actually were met so little that they turned it off tends to be what happened. And so there's things you have to do to reactivate the desire for co-regulation and social engagement in people with that structure in their attachment system, And yeah, so
why dismissive then?
Wait.
Yeah, because now you're talking about the dismissive type.
Sorry, I use them interchangeably. So in the literature on children, they use the word avoidant.
Okay.
And then in a lot of the adult literature, especially the research, they'll use the word dismissive.
And that means dismissive of co-regulating through relationship.
Yeah, they tend to...
Because they shut down that pathway.
Yeah. They tend to dismiss the needs of others in relationships, so they're allergic to dependence as adults, and they struggle collaborating with others, but they also don't anticipate people to collaborate with them, and they just take care of themselves. So that's often more associated with dismissiveness.
Right. Child's well behaved, and child grows up, and then they're high performing or whatever.
Yeah. So they
don't need anybody, not really.
Yeah. So there's reasons they use the word dismissiveness over avoidance, because they in child, they might avoid connection with the mother. They might avoid certain things. So they say the avoidance grows up into dismissiveness.
Got it.
In some of what I read.
Hmm.
So in short, there's two things they're measuring for: the ability to explore and the ability to attach. So in the secure, they can explore and they can attach, and they can do it together, where one is not contrary to the other.
Mm.
In the avoidant child, they shut down the attachment relationship. They don't really need console by the stranger or mother.
Yeah.
And they tend to hyper focus on exploration.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So then in the, anxious, ambivalent, or preoccupied,
mm-hmm.
they tend to hyper focus on relationship at the cost of their own personal exploration. They tend to explore what is meaningful to others
right.
instead of themselves.
Right.
And then, ironically, that prevents contact because there's just something missing in there.
Rather than venture out, they're hiding behind mom's skirt.
Yeah, well, in that study, they were very clingy. They tend to not explore at all.
Mm.
They tended to, when the mom left, be distraught and struggle to be consoled. So the ambivalent and anxious ambivalent is actually they're ambivalent to the presence of the caregiver. It's not actually resourcing and regulating for them. They tend to struggle with self-regulate. All children do. No child can self-regulate. They only disassociate.
But the anxious type more than the others.
As adults.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I wouldn't even go as far as say more as a child. Because children know how to disassociate, but they don't know how to self-regulate. Those are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, they would even shut down the experiment sometimes because the child was so upset, and, at the mother leaving.
Wow.
Not always. So they tend to even have like this push-pull relationship to co-regulation. It's like they don't totally trust it, so they won't let it in. And so they tend to have what's known as a nourishment barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. They also, I think the strength is they also tend to be more relational, than the avoidant. What's interesting is I kind of have moved away even from this. Like, this is like one paradigm of understanding relationship. And
super interesting. But I could see, of course, it's very narrow.
Yeah, exactly. It's narrow.
Yeah.
It's kind of reductionistic in my view.
Right.
It tends to be more like pathologizing focused. But I think it can be helpful.
Well, that being said, what do you feel like the strengths are of these different nervous system patterns?
Yeah.
Say these children grow up into adulthood and...
I'll do one more thing with the disorganized. So disorganized were interesting because they were more unpredictable. And that's one of the things is whether someone is anxious, avoidant, or secure, it starts to become easier to collaborate with them, because they're more predictable. Oh, I know if my husband or wife or partner, tends to end up in this situation, they tend to respond in these range of ways.
Right.
And so, if they really need space in that moment, I know I can learn how to collaborate.
This person's going to be secure. They're cool under fire. So this person's going to go need some space to himself. This person's going to cling, just needs a little self-soothing.
Yeah. So for me, like in conflict with either very dear friends or, which I don't end up in that often. Occasionally.
What are we talking like? Fist fights or?
No. Like, I'm thinking of one friend who I just like love to death and I saw earlier today. And we've known each other 12 years. So, and are close. So it's like, you're eventually going to run into,
of course. And those, if handled maturely, those conflicts usually make the relationship much stronger.
Yeah. And I remember we got into a period where we had some conflicts come up and it was like hard for me to like relax back into the sense of safety, even though he never threatened our friendship. And so then this was years ago. And I remember one time he was sitting at the creek and he just was like, no matter, he goes, I don't know if you really feel comfortable like taking in how secure we are. And he just started saying, I'm not going anywhere. And that's when I learned that hearing the words, I'm not going anywhere, just deeply relaxes the anxious part of me,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so with dismissive or avoidance, or Stan calls them islands, it might be like, I'm not going to engulf you.
Well, it does seem
You
like
know?
it's about actual physical proximity.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You need to hear that. Versus I might more need to hear, I'm here if you need me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going anywhere, but I'm not going to engulf you.
Exactly.
I'm not going to swallow you. Right.
I want you to be yourself.
Mhm.
You know, I think that's a big one.
I love you.
Yeah.
Exactly where I'm standing.
Yeah. And with islands, they tend to need to know that they can have the room they need, because islands regulate in themselves, where waves regulate in relationship.
Right. Would you run us down the top three
so
analogies?
sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. So it's a lot to learn here.
I study all these different models, and it's
Island
like,
wave anchor.
Yeah, island wave anchor.
Okay.
Secure is anchor.
Okay.
I'm just going to stick with secure, anxious, and avoidant.
Yeah.
But Stan Tackins, who's someone I studied,
Disorganized seems like it would be more rare to run across
genuine
somebody.
disorganization.
Yeah.
Genuine, full-fledged disorganization usually is rare. And in the studies, they do weird things like a toddler would walk backwards towards the caregiver because they were too afraid to look at them.
Whoa.
But they needed care. Pretty abnormal stuff that they couldn't classify in any of the normal range. And in adults, what's more common is for people to have disorganized parts.
Interesting.
And the other thing is
the plot thickens.
Yeah. And to connect it back to what we were saying earlier about karma, it's like, a baby that is attuned to a mother who has a disorganized attachment system. What fires together wires together. So the attunement with the baby will bring up the attachment system, which is normally scaffolded by 2 years old. And then from there, it's elaborated on into
Scaffold, meaning it's set by about 2.
The foundations, yeah. And it doesn't mean it's not malleable, but...
Right, because you can heal.
Yeah, exactly.
And balance.
For sure. But say a mother who has had a lot of abuse in her life, or a father, but for the sake, I'll just say I'm using mother in this example,
Mom was abused.
Sure. And then some of that is lodged at the root of the attachment system. What fires together wires together. So the attachment system and the threat system is firing at the same time, even though it's with the baby. It might be all sorts of things. And the baby can feel that.
Right.
The baby starts to
Could be hormonal.
Sure. Could be all sorts of
biochemical.
things.
Yeah.
But so attachment systems can be transmitted to each other. It's like, oh, the terror mom felt while I was attuned. Obviously, a baby can't think this way, And so this is
pre-verbal.
Exactly. And this is where attachment systems are somewhat inherited from our parents, even from experiences we didn't have.
Do you think that there could be a straight genetic component?
Maybe. Yeah. I'm not I don't feel as confident in knowing all the biological aspects.
Well, and I've never heard that said before, so I'm just...
Yeah, I mean, there's epigenetics people talk about for sure, which is all about passing it down. But, people will have pockets of disorganization,
Right. Maybe that's shadow.
Yeah. So for instance, I was in an argument years and years ago, like multiple relationships ago, where I started to actually feel scared of my girlfriend at the time, who was definitely not going to hurt me, like for sure. Like, I don't even know if she's ever been in a fight in her life, and in general, it's just like a sweetheart,
Right.
And in the argument, I remember like actually feeling scared. I was like, why am I scared? And so then I like went under the covers and I started to do parts work, and I started to have all these images of like violence coming to me. I didn't understand it because I've never had like violence. Fortunately, from my family wasn't a big theme. I've been around peers and, things when I was in a different spot in my life. People like, yeah, doesn't matter. But I've been around violence at like different music shows and things like that, but never from a father or things like that.
Yeah, good. And yet these
Yeah.
images, these feelings, these
Yeah.
impressions were coming out.
And my grandfather was more old school, and I
Yeah.
had heard stories,
Uh-huh.
but I also, even as a young child, felt scared of him, which was interesting. And so then I just started to feel these like flashes come to me, and I just told this part of me intuitively, I was like, oh, he couldn't hurt you now, even if he wanted to, because I wouldn't let him.
What happened to your system?
It just started to like relax. And it was just really powerful.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
and then I could see my partner more clearly.
Right.
You know, but
What would you call that even? Like, what kind of sense did you make of that experience?
and by this time I'd been doing this a long time.
Right.
Like it wasn't weird to me that a part was misperceiving what was happening.
Yeah.
And fortunately, it was so far away from the working model of my partner at the time that I couldn't even pretend to project that on her, you know. So, you know, it was clearly a me thing in the moment.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't really remember a lot of what happened outside of having feelings almost about what has happened in the lineage on it, you know?
Yeah. So this is beyond the mother-infant dyad.
Sure, yeah.
It might be
I
more
think
of
I got
a
that from
lineal
what
transmission,
was passed on, yeah.
epigenetics, or the function of mind passing down, or impressions from nervous system
Sure.
dropping from generation to generation, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And it was a pocket of disorganization.
In you.
Yes.
Right.
But I've never been physically abused. I think my dad said he spanked me once and started crying. And I was like,
That's
it
funny,
was actually
dude.
really sweet.
My mom said the same thing.
Yeah.
She spanked me once and she was like, felt so bad about it that she never did it again.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. And yet in me, I can still, there's something in me that still can kind of like feel what that is like, you know? And so, yeah, so people can get confused because they can have like a parent or something that went through a lot and then they're really sensitive, you know, in particular ways. You know, I've seen this with friends who were Jewish and had people, family members in the Holocaust who were having all these big feelings that clearly, understandably, you know, are still lodged in them from many decades ago.
Yeah.
And or not decades, well, yeah, decades, but multiple generations for some of them.
Yeah.
And it's really powerful to be in the room while they're doing that work because you can feel the intensity of what they're moving.
Remember Stan Groff saying one of his patients did an early LSD journey and had an experience of being in the woods in a battle, being fired at and hiding behind a tree and having a bullet graze by his head and exploding the bark around him. And then writing that in the trip report. And then going and digging into his lineage and asking his, you know, grandfather, telling him about it. And the grandfather saying that happened to me in World War I or II. I forget what it was. I never told anybody about it.
Yeah.
But that weird.
I've had things like that.
Yeah.
And yeah. And what's also interesting is like the kind of like co-healing that can happen, or like, you know, for instance, I had a IFS level 1 like on my birthday.
Internal family system.
Yeah, yes, internal family system. And you know, I haven't talked to my grandfather in years, hardly. You know, and just because of my birthday, I like really do not anticipate, you know, hearing from him. It's not in my sense. And on my birthday, I was doing an IFS session where I was sitting with this like inner darkness. And I was like, oh, I was asking it how it got that way. And it actually started to show me all these things of like how it showed up, particularly with my grandmother and grandfather on my mom's side. And it was so interesting because then I had those images of like some of the violence like come back. And it was like showing how this darkness inside of it was in him, and it felt not personal to him. And it was the very first time in many, many years, I felt like compassion for whatever he went through, because I don't know as much about what he went through. but no one just gets that way, you know? And it was so interesting. It was very healing for me. And then all of a sudden I got a call from him to wish me happy birthday, which isn't that outrageous. People would think, like, to hear from your grandfather on your birthday. And then it was like the first time I could feel his channel of like genuine, like deep love for him, like going towards him when he called me. And earlier in that day, they were talking about, lineage burdens at IFS. And they're like, we've noticed that sometimes when someone heals a lineage burden in themselves, they just end up in contact with that person, even if they're estranged. And I was like, wow, it's such a specific thing to name in the training. And then later that day, it was like the first time I talked to my grandfather, and I couldn't tell you how long.
Yeah.
Very
powerful.
Very first time I felt love for him.
Yeah.
And effortlessly was like, I want to come visit you.
What happened to the darkness, the feeling of darkness? Because that's really interesting. You felt this darkness.
Oh, yeah.
And then
this goes to
how did the love interact with that? Because you talked about healing.
Yeah, I felt like the darkness was either a burden or something called untethered burden, which I won't go into for now, but it was like depersonalizing it from him as a genuine being. And he's not acting in any of these historical ways now. He's actually, from what I hear from my cousins, like being like a pretty good grandfather. And so here's this history.
Maybe he was acting more out of the darkness.
Maybe. I don't know if anything ever happened with me or if it was just like generational, because before I even knew those stories, there's something weird there.
Yeah. Why do you think healing is so important? Like, why wouldn't we just disassociate and go through life? And
it just doesn't work as well. That's for sure. I think things get way worse.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a period of time of being better, for sure.
Yeah.
Why healing? I didn't even mean to get into healing. I had no interest in healing.
Right.
Like, at all. I got into meditation. I had some weird acid trips. It shifted my sense of self and world that I had some questions about. And I met a woman who laughed at me talking about this trip I had had. And she was just like, honey, if you want to integrate that experience, you should probably start meditating. And so I just started meditating because that resonated. It made sense to me.
You couldn't not.
I could not try. I didn't even buy into meditation at that point. I was just like, well, no one else has not called me insane for talking about this drug trip, And this woman seems to get some of what I'm pointing to that happened for me, which is basically just like a experience of dying and losing all sense of who I was or that I'd ever done a drug, and feeling, like more about life was being revealed to me, which is a lot to digest as an atheist,
Right.
And so then that paradigm had been shattered, and so then I started meditating, and, I think my dad says things occasionally like there was the day before you started meditating and the day after.
Your dad says this about you?
Yeah.
What changed?
I think for one, there was a certain struggle in me that started to fall away. I think two, it was like a re-enchantment in existing. Because before that, I was like pretty suicidally depressed, in a borderline scary way, And for one, that trip re-enchanted my love for life. Like it just was like, oh, I didn't realize I was perceiving from a very depressed state of consciousness.
Yeah. What was it? The internal map?
Internal working model.
Right.
Your self and world.
Your internal working model of self and world was dark, fractured.
For sure, yeah. And it wasn't even like I was like mistreated by my parents or anything. It was so confusing as a kid. I was like, why is there all this suffering in me? And it's like uncontained and I couldn't digest it.
Yeah.
And I was always I was a little confused.
Sure.
Because I never thought I had had a bad life.
Yeah.
But a lot of it felt like this generational stuff, like lineage stuff. And
there was this moment I remember when I became overwhelmed as a child.
Yeah.
And I went out into the night and sat in my driveway. And I just sat there and cried. And my mom came out. She said, "What's wrong, honey?" And she knelt down. She put her arm around me.
Yeah.
She said, "What's wrong?" And I said, I was really young. I was probably like 8
Yeah.
to 10, that age. And I said, there's just a lot of darkness in the world.
Yeah.
And she said, "You can feel that?" And I said, "Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
There's a lot of darkness in the world."
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. I had a really good childhood. I'm blessed. But even at that young age, especially at that young age, maybe before our ideas or separate self-senses,
Sure.
established, where we feel more than we think.
Yeah.
Maybe that darkness is just a kind of, it's there.
Yeah. I mean, the Buddhists, say it's a part of existence.
Yeah. 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 And so once you're in touch with it, if you feel it, you don't have a choice. And then what choice do you have? You're confronted with it. You have to learn how to metabolize it in some way.
Sure. I like that word. That's my favorite word, is metabolizing.
Cool.
And, that was the accident for me,
Which accident?
that I got into healing.
Oh, got it.
I was more like a weird psychonaut who was just like confused and curious.
Yeah. Had some LSD, had some strange experiences.
Yeah.
Reality changed, the paradigm changes, your personal paradigm changes, has to.
Yeah. And so with meditation, it's starting to be aware of the body, the mind, emotions, and just being with it in a non-reactive way.
Yeah.
Without any fantasy of it shifting, And if there's a fantasy of it shifting, well, that's now what you hold in your awareness and recycle the reaction.
Which is to say, anything that's not your immediate experience here and now, you embrace and move towards. And the second you want to get away from your experience, you come right back.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I mean, there's so many meditations, but
Is that what
for
you
me-
meant, though, when you were describing it?
yeah, it's like you have an object to focus, you are resting your awareness in it or on it, and that object, I learned from someone who was like very complicated. He was, you could use any of the
His methods were complicated,
no
or
way.
he was a complicated person? Both.
He was complicated, not in the way that he was like problematic. He was hard for me to talk to about anything but meditation. But when it came to meditation, there was no one else I'd rather talk to. So it's like, that was cool. But, some people, they start with something simple like the breath or the body. And he basically was teaching people to deconstruct the sense of self. And he would encourage you to sit for like hours at a time.
Right.
I remember one time on a retreat, someone was like, "What's the quickest way of being enlightened?" And he said, "Strong determination sits." So then I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to start sitting for like 3 hours without moving. And I did. It was really powerful, for sure. I don't know if I agree with that anymore, but, I think, and this goes back to healing. It's like, as the self is less solid, it's more malleable. As you can start to have some space from believing the thoughts in your head, they don't enchant your perception as strongly, And so meditation defuses us from the habitual, absorption we have in our thoughts and feelings, But it can also disassociate you from them.
Right. And you've said enchant twice in this conversation in very different ways, different meanings.
Sure.
One is the re-enchantment of living in a kind of flatland reality, materialism or atheism, and moving into a place that's much more buoyant and full and meaningful. And the other is like an enchantress, like being hexed, like.
Can't remember how I used it the other time. I'll normally use it positively.
Right.
So I'm curious what I meant earlier.
But just now you said getting enchanted.
Oh yeah,
Iron
hex. Just now I used it.
Yes.
See how bad memory is?
It's all good.
In general. It's like, wow, I forgot I said that.
Yeah, totally. Well, here we are agreeing on what did and didn't happen. So
exactly.
That's our interpersonal reality.
Yeah.
Check.
Right. That was fun. But yeah, I like the word hex. So yeah, like the meditation will do that and help us not take ourselves so seriously and maybe see ourselves more clearly.
Right.
But that doesn't mean how you show up ends up being directly touched by that.
Mm.
And it doesn't mean you're in alignment with secure, you know, relationships.
Maybe you could be enlightened and you could still be a prick.
Yeah, for sure.
personally.
You've been some of my best teachers. For sure, seriously. You know? Yeah. I mean, I would not say my first serious one-on-one teacher was someone I experienced as like warm.
Yeah.
I was a little nervous of him.
Yeah.
Some of that was my own personality disposition, without a doubt, you know. And I think some of it is, you know, he had a cutting medicine.
Yeah.
You know,
My first two most potent teachers, Chris Curran and Frank Berliner, they were both incredible humans.
Yeah.
Right. And they both had this paternalistic warmth to them that was very cutting.
Yeah.
Which I needed.
Yeah.
A lot. They wouldn't settle for me being anything but clear and present and strong in my practice.
Cool.
And that was good. And those two men are really good examples. I gravitated towards them because they had that kind of strength of character and gravitas and integration that I perceived was possible in my own life.
Yeah.
Thankfully, neither of them was a, you know, meditating, you know, sociopath.
Sure.
Like, those guys are around, you know.
Sure.
Spiritually enlightened, but, you know.
Avoid most of them.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. High and dark triad, for example, or psychopathy, or lack empathy.
Yeah.
But have spiritual, you know, competencies that are.
You know, Dan Brown's book, The Cloudless Mind, I believe, he talking to like a group of therapists, and he did all this research on like people who were considered like highly awake meditators. And he was using a particular Tibet model to map, I think, enlightenment is what I gathered. And he said it wasn't until you're at a particular bhumi that meditation directly started to erode away.
Will you define bhumi?
I actually don't know it super well.
Okay.
But
just like the idea that
basically it's a stage of awareness.
There's stages, bhumis, stages. Yeah. You're working through meditation, you're hitting these bhumis.
Yeah. And that's about as much, because I don't really map mine or other people as much in that way.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Just one.
No, you're great.
Definition there.
So he would say until you're at a certain stage, meditation doesn't start to erode away certain personality disorder. What's interesting is I don't even really buy the DSM, so I'm kind of, you know, how I would frame that is differently. There's so much I would critique about it, but you know, he would say
the diagnostic statistical manual,
for mental illness,
psychology,
things like that, psychiatry, and but you know, he would say that meditation doesn't target that as directly as psychotherapy. You know.
Right.
And so he would say this is why you have people with profound transmission who are still.
What would you say the limit of each is? And it seems like you've come to a nice place where you're kind of using both intrinsically, and that creates a very kind of specific flavor for your healing work. But what are the limitations of both psychotherapy and contemplative practice?
Sure. I mean, I think depending on how you're doing psychotherapy and contemplative practice is one thing. At this point, I'm like, dude, no one, it's just so, let me just talk about myself. If I'm doing talk therapy, you really can only go so far. You can create corrective experiences of relationship with talk therapy. You can process things together. There's kind of some indirect contact. So if the therapist is like attuned and the other person is somehow consciously or unconsciously sensing that attunement, there can still be really powerful healing in talk therapy, especially for people that have had to remain silent. You know, I found this, you know, especially clients who have felt like silenced as minorities and things like that, that if I just let them speak, there's actually a lot of healing that can happen. So one person I had to do basically talk therapy with for years before they'd want to go into like processes. And I think that was because of how silenced they had been most of their life.
Mm.
And they also were talkers. So it's like, you know,
Maybe didn't even know how to.
share the inside out. Yeah. So, that can be really important. Or I know some people who are really isolated who I've worked with who talk therapy is actually really healing because they're not getting a lot of that resource elsewhere, So
When does it become limited then? Like,
I think you don't
think
shift
there is
the
kind of
internal
a-
working model as directly.
right.
Um,
There's kind of a skepticism of talk therapy these days.
True. Yeah. I think
Where
it
people rightly are going like, oh, therapy, that's when you sit on a couch and talk for 40 years and
Yeah.
pay forkloads of money and nothing changes. kind of
Yeah.
thing. There's a cynicism about it.
For sure. Yeah. Without a doubt.
But I know how powerful it is, but it does seem kind of limited in some ways.
Yeah. I mean, for one, if practitioner isn't attuned to the other person and they're just letting someone, just basically regurgitate words,
Right.
that's not going to heal that much.
What's the importance of shifting it emotionally and not just intellectually?
Yeah. So I would say when I start to relate to my mind and to my body and to my heart or emotions, then that can create a paradigm shift over time where people stop relating from them and start relating to them, And as you do that, meditation does that. The thoughts and feelings were who I was. And then all of a sudden you pop out of that in different ways. And then you have perspective on the thoughts and feelings. And some people get a little dismissive for a while of other people's thoughts and feelings when they see that. And that's pretty normal. And, I've done that for sure. Yeah. I have to resist the urge to playfully make fun of myself as much as I'd like.
Feel free to make fun of yourself.
Oh my God, I remember I
don't resist.
had someone I was dating telling me about something they were really worried about, and to me it was so clear that like they were just really hooked in their thoughts. And so then I said something like, and that's sometimes like it's just our thoughts.
Right.
It was not the right time.
As they were having their leg amputated.
So bad. Yeah, their leg wasn't amputated. Yeah, but that's a great example of just the total misattunement.
Right.
It's like using
just because it's you're unconditionally free.
It's like I want a blanket to be warm, and you're getting me a hammer right now. Like this is not the right tool.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, for sure. I think talk therapy can give us perspective. We can process things, but it doesn't necessarily shift our relationship to the thoughts and feelings themselves. Experiential therapies do. Parts work in IFS. It's like, where do you notice that part in or around your body?
Right.
Oh, I'm going to shift how I relate to it. Right. And I think, people shift their attachment style through changing how they relate to themselves internally.
Yeah.
And then, and this is, Dan says you can heal the internal working model of self and world, gaining metacognition on our attachment style. So where am I difficult? Can I start to sense those places in me that are difficult before they're enacting in the moment in a relationship? Unfortunately, they normally have to enact for a while for us to believe the feedback that other people are telling us, because most people are a hero in their own world,
Yeah.
Someone said that one time. I loved it. They're like, everyone's a hero in their own story. I'm like, yeah, fuck.
Well, it's hard to see our blind spots.
Yeah.
And you said this earlier, we need other people to reflect these patterns to us, or else we just don't see them, period.
Sometimes it's books doing that. I think that's where studying attachment styles is helpful. It's like, I learned my attachment style actually struggles to receive the very care it's asking for, And that's the ambivalence of anxious ambivalence. So I'm actually ambivalent to the care, and and things like that. There's a nourishment barrier.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've had to consciously slow myself down by getting into relationship with those parts of me through IFS or meditation or things like that. And then, being able to have it mapped out. What are the difficulties of these styles,
Yeah.
you know, also then helps me get the care I need. It's like,
Right.
oh, right now,
And
tell me you're not going anywhere.
that's where the healing happens, right?
Yeah.
And then when you actually feel like there's movement happening in your own nervous system and your attachment style, your paradigm is shifting and you're moving towards security, like what are the cues in your own system? Like what is healing?
For me?
Yeah. What is it like?
I mean, I think I'm not leaving myself,
Right.
For my
So
attachment
before you would
style.
flee, dissociate.
Yeah. Or, you know, preoccupied is I'm preoccupied with what the other person is doing.
Right.
You know?
Right. Which is
It's
another
like-
way to dissociate from yourself.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
So for me, it's like I don't leave myself. For someone who's dismissive, it might be I can stay in relationship. It's I'm actually not managing the feeling of being engulfed or not, you know?
Yeah.
So for so other people it might be different. And then the third,
Interesting. So presence.
sure, yeah.
Yeah. Healing feels like presence.
Yeah, I think it's being able to stay present on the level of yourself and in the relational space. Some people are very present in the relational space, but then can struggle to self-regulate what arises in them, and they require the relational space to be very responsive to them. And then it's this weird thing where it's subtly they're like controlling the relational space, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other thing studying attachment styles is helpful for is collaborating. It's like, oh, if I know my partner is afraid of engulfment and they're reporting that, the attachment map kind of outlines that, then it's easier for me to know, like, hey, go take time to yourself. But I need reassurance that you're going to come back and that you're not actually leaving.
Right.
And then that's when you can co-regulate.
And also not, we'll find if you don't want to tend to me, like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Get out of my life. Never come back until tomorrow when I call you up. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Like knowing that that's a certain amount of give and take is going to be unavoidable.
Yeah. Anxious, ambivalent tend to threaten relationships more than islands.
Interesting.
I mean, it's not true across the board.
Because islands will get up and walk away, and that is perceived as a threat, right? Sometimes. But anxious people will be like, you know what?
We'll threaten it, but they're bluffs usually.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is what I was alluding to.
Yeah. And one of the worst things apparently for a relationship, which I've struggled with at times.
Right. Because you're threatening the safety and the stability of the connection, right?
Yeah. And there's vocal and silent ways of doing that. So I think avoidants tend to do that silently more,
right?
You know?
Yeah. Pick up and leave kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I came in almost with this whole map of sort of what I wanted to share, and it's a bunch of different spaces. And one of the things I really want to get to is like the three things, which is repairing the internal working model, metacognition, because it helps us be self-aware. And it also helps us start to create that experience of reflecting on parts.
Yep.
So then over time, you have more capacity to identify them in the moment.
Right.
But if you're so flooded, you know, then you're just going to keep reenacting certain patterns.
Right.
The third thing is collaborative relationship skills.
Okay.
What's interesting is waves tend to imagine that they're better at collaborating in relationship than islands because they're more relational.
They imagine that because they're relational, they're better at being in relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the challenges of the wave. And I've had to like wake up in myself, even as, just because I'm more relational than some of my partners, that doesn't mean I'm actually like
more skilled
and collaborating.
Right.
Which is working with their needs.
Is different.
Collaborating is working with their needs, not what I imagine relationship should be.
This is great. I want to hit all three of these.
Yeah.
And could you talk about the limitations of contemplation as well?
Limitations of contemplation.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a lot of my experience with meditation has been silently inside of myself, you know, which is great for someone who's preoccupied because they struggle with self-regulation. And it's been a really good medicine, you know, for me. And I think it's really easy to just drop the attachment needs, you know, and it really reinforces the island's islanding, you know, it really reinforces dismissive people relying on themselves.
Right.
You know,
Which can be a negative.
sure.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it can reinforce a certain neurosis. You know, neurosis here I'm just using as something that causes you to suffer in ways that are unnecessary.
I describe it as simply as negative emotion.
Oh, interesting.
Negative emotionality.
Yeah, and you know, like shocker, like sitting silently with yourself doesn't directly make you know how to like take care of your wife better or husband better. You know,
Right.
it's not exactly starting to do the work to figure out what they need in order to feel cared for.
Yeah.
Because this is another thing. So many people imagine they're caring for their partner, but they're not actually starting to sense what they need in order to feel cared for.
Yeah.
So what I need in order to feel cared for is proximity. And if we're triggered and I'm really caring for you by investing in our proximity together, but you regulate on your own, do you feel cared for?
Nope.
Yeah.
That's like the danger of the golden rule.
Yeah.
Do unto others as you would have others do unto you.
Yeah.
Because that's you doing what you think you would want.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Rather than giving the person what they need in a relationship.
Yeah. And this is where, you know, you're not really doing the relational work to start to get a sense for what people need in order to feel cared for, like on a cushion.
Right.
I mean, you can do visualizations like Tonglen, or you can in your
Do you think
heart.
it's a good like primer for a relationship? Because my experience has been the more present and attuned I am, just because I'm doing mindfulness or awareness practices,
Sure.
the better I can show up for people, even though it's a separate domain.
I think presence and attunement's different than meditation.
Nice.
I think that meditation cultivates that, and that's the intention of a lot of it.
Right.
But, you know, Vipassana does way more with presence and attunement.
We disagree on that point.
Oh, interesting.
At least in the sense of my understanding of my own practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My presence and attunement is a part of meditation, but I think how they use it, how different traditions use it is different. So, yeah, where like if I'm bringing presence to the experience of selfing, that's something different than bringing presence to my partner and what will like soothe her in a moment of like anxiety.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if it's silence and I'm just sitting here meditating with her and I'm just totally with her and it's silent, well, that might be dysregulating.
Yeah.
For someone who needs that relational engagement.
Yeah, I get it.
You know?
I guess I see it as, you know, when I sit on the cushion and inevitably I'm confronted with parts that are starving or states that feel scary, like an emptiness.
Sure.
The antidote to those sort of negative awareness states is always, always, always self-love, compassion, self-attunement. And those energies, that energy feels one and the same. This divine love that solves me also flows through me in intimate relationship and allows healing for us. That kind of thing.
I 100% agree with what you just shared.
Yeah.
You know? I've just seen enough people who don't have that capacity who are profound practitioners, you know?
True.
Like eventually I think
I hear that point too.
I get that sense.
Yeah.
And I don't
and here's you pointing that out makes me recognize my bias that the pinnacle of meditation is love.
Yeah.
And it isn't for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's necessary to go. I think you're going to eventually encounter love if you're on the spiritual path.
Yeah.
You know, if you didn't, I actually would be interested in meeting you.
Yeah, the ultimate spiritual reality is hatred.
But I just don't think it as directly makes people better at relationship as actually working in relationship with people.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
I think that's some of the limitation. I also don't think it targets the attachment system as directly. I think some loving kindness can. I think some, you know, I mean, like Dadio is what inspired Ideal Parent Figure Protocol, from my understanding.
Yeah.
You know, there are ways it gets at it. And
do you think that's because of the transcendent function of meditation that allows you to go beyond the limitations of the attachment system?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a huge part is like it's just like a deeper matter at hand, you know?
Yeah.
And honestly, if I had to choose between attachment healing and all this stuff, or like the stuff that I get from my contemplative practice, hands down, without a doubt, the contemplative stuff. It's just way more liberating.
Right. Interesting.
It's way, I think independent of conditions. So instead of trying to create just like a really nice, lovely, good life, I feel a security that is actually with me in the moments that I feel like the most sorrow. And the moments I feel like the most sorrow and I can't bear it are normally the times where I've really turned to my practice and like had shifts that were important.
Same.
And I think
I believe it's been life-saving to me multiple times.
And I think reality in life is not always secure, and I need something that is a sort of industrial strength in the sense of, instead of creating like this relationship that's super nourishing and safe, like, yeah, that's great. That's meant to help us go do life, which honestly isn't,
Yeah. And people are limited and flawed, and
Sure.
nobody's morally perfect.
Yeah.
And people die and relationships end.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
And, and we learn from those endings and from the suffering of certain experiences.
Sure.
Yeah,
definitely. The Buddha famously, according to the parables, was confronted with suffering after living in the palace. And that's what propelled him onto the journey of awakening.
For sure. Yeah. So it was coming into contact with suffering.
About the three things.
Oh, the three things. I should have really started with that at the beginning. It's been way more of I was like, how do I make this coherent? But yeah, just preparing the internal working model, I think, is really done experientially in inner work and in corrective experiences in relationship. Then metacognition, meditation trains that. Being aware of thoughts, being aware of feelings, but you may not be able to see the structures of your attachment system just because you're aware of your thoughts and feelings. That requires another kind of map, which is like people who've mapped out the attachment system. So I can see this very specific structure, because if one of the structures of the dismissive, by the way, is self-idealizing, and they tend to cut out people who do not, a highly dismissive person will cut out people who do not view them in the idealism that they view themselves.
Yeah. That's kind of our folk definition of a dismissive person too, right? Somebody who thinks they're the hottest.
Yeah. So it's in the pop culture too.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, to be able to see that structure, you have to also buy in that like, oh yeah, that would be a difficult thing. I might do that too.
Right. So that's your three-prong approach.
And the collaborative relationship skills.
Okay.
So internal working model, metacognition, collaborative relationship skills.
Nice.
Nice. And to be in a securely functioning relationship, you don't need secure attachment.
Right.
You just need enough predictability on someone's attachment system and the willingness to work with what they struggle with.
Right.
So more people.
Your odd shape needs to fit somebody else's odd shape, and then,
Yeah. And you have to learn what this other odd shape needs in order to feel cared for. Most likely it's something that you're not used to. And you have to figure out if you enjoy doing that enough to do that for the rest of your life.
Right. Yeah.
If you're thinking marriage.
Right. Yeah. Is the harmony that requires work worth the work?
Yeah. And, I don't think therapy wakes many people up,
Right.
I think it can provide people with a foundation where life sometimes happens spontaneously. And I think people naturally come into a sense of connectedness with life and sensing these things as like their inner world starts to stabilize and their life starts to stabilize. Some people don't, some people live good lives and never embark on awakening,
Right.
And some people wake up in deep ways and have pretty shitty lives, and so and then some of their structures I don't think are like enacting saintly qualities,
Right.
And so I just think they're different things. I think they help each other, but thankfully we haven't need to have all these secure relationships and secure teachers in history for people to wake up and transmit that.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the same time, I'm glad that that's not being neglected and we're breaking this fantasy that people who are awake are perfect people, you know. Yeah.
It seems like awakening, enlightenment, growth has its own illogic.
Yeah.
And it can just happen.
Yeah.
And the work is kind of like with your LSD experience early on. The work is then comes after.
Sure.
In banging out the actual territory, walking the path of the new paradigm that opens up.
Yeah. Well, I think you're also, you know, in Buddhism, they talk about insight, the stage of insight. Mm-hmm. First, you intellectually grasp it, mm-hmm. then you understand it. And then what I say is then you become it,
yeah.
You know, and there's a difference between manifesting a realization and an insight and living and having that mobilize the way your body, mind, like enacts itself in the world.
Yeah.
And then having a experience on a drug trip or a retreat that makes you realize something. And then you kind of go back, slowly live from that deeper and deeper. But, you know, the more time you spend in those spaces, the easier it is to move from them.
Yeah.
And I think all that's experiential. Like that can't be theoretical. As much as I like to yap, you know.
More and more I feel like these energies coming through me. I feel like I can pull from a kind of divine source.
Yeah.
And the energy when it's flowing not only feels good and makes me shiver, like the hair will go up my arm. It's called piloerection, when your hair stands on end.
Oh yeah.
So it's like it's this sense of there being a divine current.
Sure.
But also it does feel like it's in some ways moving me, and that the virtues like higher love,
sure,
divine love, are readily available to us to pull on and then move us in these increasing ways, knocking out the kinks in our armor.
Yeah. And I think that's where state training gets helpful, because if you touch into those experiences through some process, whether it's like, you know, depth psychology does that through archetypal work and the imaginal, like using dreams and stuff, you know? And the less you imagine yourself to be this particular person, and the easier it is for these forces to move us, you know?
Yeah, right.
One of my favorite things, I was doing this archetypal work in the middle of a conflict. And I was like, I'm not showing up that great here. And I was dating some really, yeah, in that moment I was.
Yeah.
You know, I have a high value for finding the places I'm still not great at and trying to tend to those, you know.
Well, it's good. I mean, that's the really good musicians, for example, aren't necessarily just good at practicing all the time. They're good at identifying the places where they're weak, and then trying to strengthen those places.
And it's worth adding that it's not because those places are wrong in me. Right. It's like those are the places that need the most care and actually
they're a little out of tune,
need attention.
Yeah,
you know.
Right.
But yeah, I was in this argument, and the person I was dating at the time was really into Christ. It wasn't the archetype I used a lot, but I kept having interesting experiences, and I was like, all right, I'll play around with this, and we were just in this heated thing. I knew I wasn't in a place. Another time I feel like I'm in shadow is when my partner feels like my enemy, you know? And that's not true for everyone, but, you know,
I think it's
sometimes
common. I think it's pretty common.
Yeah.
At least we fall into these states where the person we love the most comes into you can't trust them.
Sure.
They come into, their motivations come into question. You're at war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I thought at war. And so I could come from the part of me that was at war with my partner at the time. And then instead, I just kept saying to myself, may I hear from the love of Christ? May I see from the love of Christ? And may I feel from the love of Christ? I just kept saying that, and we paused our interaction. I said that enough to where I started to feel more love come online.
Mm.
And because I was like,
And
okay,
you said this internally?
yeah,
Right.
yeah. At least I think so. And then I looked at my partner at the time, and I started to feel how much pain they were in and how much that interaction was like painful. And I think I just said something like, I don't even remember what I said. I think I said, I'm sorry it hurts this much, or something. Like my whole tone of voice shifted. I just started to come from that intention instead of from the part of me that felt like a war with him.
Right.
You know?
Right. Powerful to interrupt those grooves.
Yeah. And, you know, I think ultimately that relationship didn't work out. But it was those moments that just like really taught me. It's like, oh, where are we coming from? Can we be aware of when we're coming from the places that tend to perpetuate our problems?
Yeah.
You know?
And look at the gem it gave you. With
Yeah.
being able to interrupt like an intense state like that with divine love.
Sure.
Through the visualization.
And this is the other thing with preparing the internal working model. If we don't have a sense of where we're going, you know, it's like in Buddhism, they have all these enlightened qualities you want to like tend to. So there's some vision of where we're going and like what's helpful and not helpful, you know. If my point is survival, which being in very dangerous situations, you know, that tends to be the priority.
Yeah.
Disorganization kind of is a very smart strategy of how to survive a very bad environment, you know, and still get cared enough,
right?
You know, so
confuse your enemies.
Yeah. Well, it also as children, it probably is how they needed to survive. If they showed up in a way congruent with a secure parent, they probably would have been very seriously injured.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's the other thing is like having compassion.
If your caregiver turns into a monster because they drank all night and they came home, and then you approach them like they're your loving father.
Yeah.
They beat the shit out of you.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So that is where, you know, feeling a lot of love for how these strategies, like where they came from, like whether they're in me or a person I'm in a relationship with or friendship with.
Yeah.
And it's like remembering that whether something bad happened to them or it came from down their line in some way, like being able to sense that can open the heart, you know, and help us actually care for that person, you know. And these all happen in fleeting moments. Like I get caught up in my strategies. People get caught up in their parts. And the more we start to taste what it's like to not come from that place, but to come from like this deeper space that includes each other, you know, I think you start to know when you're in a partner. You're like, oh, I might be.
It's liberating.
Yeah. And we still have to dance our dance. So I still think there are things that have to enact themselves and be moved through.
Right. But then maybe the pathology becomes the strength.
For sure. I mean, this is where I was saying I don't. I think understanding attachment style is great. I think going for secure attachment is a really amazing, important goal. And it definitely has made my life better, you know. And there's still places I need to tend to in myself, you know, without doubt for me, you know. So I know the scariest people to me are the people who really think they're done, you know. I can't tell you how many like teachers I've come across or things that are just like holding that air, and then as I get closer to them, or I end up with a client who's like processing the falling out of that spiritual community or something, of which there are like, I think of like 6 off the top of my head.
Yeah.
You know, different communities. Like it's rampant in the world of spirituality.
Yeah.
You know, because of idealism, self-idealism. But
the perniciousness of ego as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. being finished, being enlightened.
Yeah. And yet still, if I had to choose one, I'd choose awakening over therapy without a doubt.
Right.
You know,
Well, it's more fun.
I just find it also hits more directly, I think. Like, actually just stop interfering with how life is in you and start to really meet it. And some people, though, need a lot of help with that, a lot of holding, you know, because they'll close their eyes and then they'll have flashbacks for weeks. You know, I've fucked up in my career at times like that. Or I've had experiences of like someone's system wasn't open for years. And then slowly they start opening. And then all of a sudden, boom, we're stuck in flashbacks for weeks.
Flooded.
Yeah.
Trauma.
Flooded. Yeah. And so then, and I was like, man, I thought I understood like how the safety hatch on your mind worked. And all of a sudden, you know, it got malleable enough that thing went off.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And for people on some sort of path that are consciously consenting to that and expecting their life to fall apart at times, you know, and that's not viewed as just a bad thing. You know, that's fine. But I think some people, you know, when they get into therapy and they're working with someone experiential, they don't anticipate that if there's a lot of chaos in there, their life might get a little like chaotic for a while.
Yeah.
And last I'll say is sometimes that won't happen, which is also interesting. And someone who I'm like, oh man, this person has a lot of trauma, very gung-ho, sincere, they want to work on it. And I'm like, man, things might get bad for a while. And then all of a sudden, just like clear coasting, like, and healing in ways I couldn't imagine quicker than I imagined, you know?
Wild.
Yeah. That's why I don't even, sometimes I'm like, dude, what job am I freaking doing? I feel more like a midwife than a therapist. You know what I mean? Where I'm like midwifing wisdom, where it's like, okay, once you're in touch with your wisdom, I need to get out of the way because I'm just going to fuck it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the wisdom comes from their own presence and their own awareness of being with their mind, being with their body. And the wisdom is normally more in the line of like that facet of our being, of being with ourselves and being able to be present in the midst of anything, you know?
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Aesclepion. We hope you enjoyed the show and that you feel uplifted, empowered.
Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, and find us on Substack.
Farewell, friends.